Hi, everyone. It's Clay from your friendly neighborhood learning services team here to introduce a video that we think you're really going to like. A few weeks ago, one of our trainers, Ryan, who is also an expert complete guru at reporting, had a 30-minute training session with some internal folks about hosting reports to the WX. Now, knowing what an expert Ryan was, we decided to record it and we want to make it available to you all and have it here on the portal so you can benefit from it every bit as much as our internal team did. So that's what this is. Couple things before I introduce Ryan and we get this show on the road. First up, we plan on doing recordings like this going forward. However, we don't have a name for them. We don't want to call them Lunch and Learns. That's a little bit boring and so 2021. So in the comments below, if you have a good name for what these videos will eventually be, feel free to drop it in. Also, drop in the comments below any ideas you have for upcoming videos that we may think about tackling. And I would be remiss without mentioning that the content of this video is a course as well as videos that are available on Sage University. Feel free to check those out as well. Without further ado, here's Ryan talking about how to host reports on the WX.
Okay, we've gathered here to go through a topic that we did not quite make it to in our reports course, but this is really a pretty easy topic, and I think that we can really boil this down to a 30-minute quick webinar. So we're going to go through the 3-step process of creating WX reports. And if you follow these 3 steps, it's a really easy way to remember how to make it happen. And it's really what you see on your screen right there. We're going to design a report. We're going to convert it to a WX report so it can be seen in WX. And then we have to publish it inside of a WX process like every other bit of content that goes into WX. And those are the 3 steps. Now, the first step of designing a report is usually the thing that we kind of fly past because a lot of times our reports are already built, but we need to talk about a couple of things that really help us to understand how these reports even make it into WX, because a lot of times we'll take a report we really love and we just can't make it display, and we need to understand why. So I'm going to start by designing a report. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of things that you should really know about this. The first thing is we have to know our report type, and anybody who's built a report understands that the first thing that you pick when you build one from scratch is the report type. So when you're creating a new report, there's an update that just came in our platform earlier this year that tells us to the right what objects are in that report type. So that's a really easy way to take a look at one that already exists and say, yeah, this is going to have what I need in it. And we're going to talk about what you need in it here in just a few moments, so just hold that thought for a moment. However, if you're looking at an existing report, you now have the ability to see that report type directly above the title when you're running an existing report. So I'm going to go into one, and we're just going to pick anything at random. How about this one right here in my recent section at the top of my reports tab? So if you run that report, it didn't used to be there, but now as of our platform update earlier this year, you can now see the name of the report type right here up above the title, and so that's telling you which one you're using. Now, that alone might not tell you what objects are in there entirely, but we do know that this one's going to have team member, and that's the important thing because every single WX report is going to have team member in it, and this is also going to tell us about our HR requests. What we're looking for is something called the base object, and I'm going to tell you how to find that here in just a second. So knowing your report type is good, but knowing your primary object and your base object are even more important. So the primary object has to be team member, and that's because visibility into the data on a WX report is tied to who is below the person viewing it in the org chart. So we're going through the manager field on the team member object. So without having the team member object at the top of our report, and therefore the manager field listed on it, the system has no way of knowing what data to display, and if it has no data to display, it just shows nothing at all. So the primary object has to be team member. So I'm going to go into setup and I'm going to build a new custom report type really quickly, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about with the primary object. So this is a system administrator function. So HR managers can build these WX reports, but a system administrator has to build any custom report types if they are needed. But if you go to setup and you go to report types, if you were to go into your report types here, and then click the button that tells you to create a new report type, the primary object is the very first thing that you select. So if you are building a new report type for reporting and you want this to go out onto WX, you've only got one option here. You've got to pick team members to make that happen. So I'm going to put in a report type label here of report type for WX reports course. And in the description here, I'm just going to write Ryan's rule because I always tell you to put in a description. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop this into the other reports category and deploy it like we always do, and click the next button because that's going to lead into something else we're going to do here in just a minute. Okay, so the primary object has to be team member. And one thing that you can take a look at, like I said, when you're building a new report and you're picking a report type, if you are an HR manager or you're a system administrator and you can't be bothered to go to setup, as long as you can see team member over there in the list of objects used in the report type, it's probably going to work. So let me show you what I'm talking about with that. If I go to the reports tab and I click the new report button, and I search for a report type, or I click on any one of these down below, it tells you off to the right here what objects are used. And as long as you see team member there, you're probably going to be okay. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work, but most likely it's going to be fine. So those are the two ways that you can make sure that you've got team member set as your primary object. But what's even more important is something that we have to copy down, and that's the base object. So we have to find out what the base object is. This is the object whose data represents every single individual row in the report. So basically, if you were to flip the toggle that hides the details of your report, you would be hiding the records for the base object. The base object is what the record count represents for the entire report. So if you're working with only a single object in your report type, the base object is also your primary object, and that means that it's team member. So if I take a look at the report type that I was just working on, if I were to just save it right here, that is my base object also. It's the lowest level of my join that you see here in the report type. So if I were to build a report based on that, then every single row would represent a different team member. That's my base object. But it gets more complicated when you start to join objects together. And this is the most complicated kind of join you can do. And I'm going to build this, and if you're following along with me, we're going to use this report type to build our hands-on exercise here in a few moments. So you can see that I've joined together 4 different objects here in the data hierarchy. We start with team member. We're going to add in the employment records. We're going to add in the absence records, and we're going to add in absence day records underneath of that because this is an object that was built to enhance reporting on our time off data. So I'm going to build that right now. And the lowest level of object, each time I'm building this, becomes the next base object. So right now I've got a base object of team member. I'm going to click to relate another object, and I'm going to use the quick find to make that happen. And I'm going to type in employment. So when I do that, now that becomes the base object. So I'm going to then add in absence because absence is an object that is parented directly to employment. Now, absence is the base object, but I want to be able to report on each individual day record that I have in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and, select from this list, absence day record. And now this is the most complicated join you can do. You can see it doesn't let us add any more, but that is now my base object, absence day record. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And I really don't need to do anything else. But if you're following along with this in this org up until October 4th of 2023, that is the name of the report type we're going to select when we build our new report here in a few moments. So that's the base object. Okay, now that we know what our base object is, we need to go and find that base name in the object manager. HR managers may not have access to this, or they may be able to get to setup but not change anything, but still be able to look that up. So this is where our notepad or text edit or Word document comes in handy, because we're going to need to copy that down. So what I would like for you to do is make your way over to setup right now. Go ahead and use that setup gear in the upper right corner. Click to the setup side of the system. And we're going to use this object manager tab up here in the upper left. And we are going to search for the name of our base object right now. In this case, it was absence day record. So using this quick find to the upper right, absence day will get me there. And you can see the API name. We need to copy that because it is not going to work if we don't have that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Open up my notepad. I'm going to get rid of all this login stuff. And I'm just going to paste that in. That's my base object name. You can also just type it out by hand if you really want to, but that can be difficult to do. So hopefully you've got that copied. And we're just going to hold on to that for right now. Now we're going to go build our report, and it's going to be based on that. So now we've got our object name. That's good. Now we're going to build our report, and we're going to get the API name of it. So when we save this, we're going to see a report unique name. However, I wanted to show you this slide first, because if you're just using an existing report you've already got and you love, then you can find an existing report's report unique name or API name by going to its properties in the edit screen. So I'll show you both of these options here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and make our way over to, using the app launcher, the people admin, or pretty much any part of these apps over here, or you can just type in reports. But let's go to the people admin app using the app launcher. Okay, and we're going to go to the reports tab along the top of the screen, if that's the method that you used to get there. And we're going to click the new report button to the upper right. Don't use the Salesforce Classic button one. We will never use that again. Only use the new report button here in the upper right corner. And we're going to search for and select that report type. Now, this is another thing that came in our platform update earlier this year, is the ability to search through recently used report types. That seems to be sabotaging us a lot. So I built one that said WX reports. That is not the report type that I want. We need to switch to this all category over here on the left first. So just like when you're searching through every single report that you've got available to you, we want to make sure that all category is selected. And then with WX report searched for, you should be able to find the report type that I just created for us. And you can see down over here on the right, the 4 objects that we joined together. Team members are primary, absence day record is our base. The base object is really what we wanted to remember. So go ahead and select that report type for WX reports course and click the Start Report button over to the right. Those of you who took the reports course know that every single time you start a new report, we need to make sure we go to our filters pane over here on the left, make that 2 go down to a 0. We need to start with an unfiltered report. So I'm going to go ahead and click the filters, and I'm going to change these 2 filters from my or whatever to all. They need to both say all. So the show me filter is going to be set to all team members. Every WX report should say all team members there, because that's our primary object. And then don't worry about the gray section. We'll fix that in just a moment. The anniversary here, we're going to change not the field involved, but the range. So it's this current FQ. We're going to change that range to all time also. It's just the top option. So all team members, all time is what our filters should say on every single WX report by default. Up here in the upper right, there's an update preview automatically toggle just under the run button. Go ahead and flip that on, and hopefully you won't have to do that ever again. Leave that toggle turned on. Okay, now we have a report that's showing our managers every single person who's taken time off on every single day that's below them in the org chart. That's the potential of this report. This report shows us absolutely everybody. WX is going to take care of making it relevant to just the managers. So what we want to do is make sure that this report is only showing us data that's going to be relevant to a certain point in time. So I'm going to make it so that it's only showing us absences that were taken in the last 90 days, and then maybe everything into the future up to 90 days. So we're going to put in 2 filters here, and they're both going to use the absence day record object's day field. So we're going to go to add filter here in the upper left, and we're going to type in day. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom into the absence day record object section, you will find a field simply called day. That's the one we're going to use. We're going to group by day. We're going to filter twice by day. That's the only field we're going to use for this report. So we're going to go ahead and click day. And it pops up a filter by day over here, and it says equals. We're going to change that to greater or equal. And in the value down below, instead of choosing a specific date, we're going to click this use relative date link. Okay, so greater or equal to what? We're going to click use relative date, and we're going to type 90 days ago. This report is only going to show us absences that were taken up to 90 days ago. We're going to click apply. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to add another filter for day. Scrolling down to find the day field in the absence day record object section. And this time we're going to say less or equal to another relative date. And this one we're going to say next 90 days. I'm just typing in kind of plain text phrases. This filter section is very good at parsing what we mean. And I'm going to click apply on that. Okay, we're almost done with this, believe it or not. So we're going to go back to the outline pane. And over here in the outline pane, instead of the filters pane, in the add group section, we're going to type in and select day again. We're going to use that same field, day. We're going to group by that. I wouldn't worry about all those other things you have over here. You don't need to worry about grouping by any of those. Now we have a record count of how many people were out on a certain day. And of course, this is our entire organization. And just to kind of drive that point home, I'm going to click the add chart button here in the upper right corner. And I'm going to change that, but I'm going to change it to a line so we can kind of see. Okay, so I see a spike on the 23rd of November, and then we had another spike on the 28th of December. It looks like a lot of people are going to be taking time off around the American holidays. And this is, of course, just preview data, so we'd have to click the run button to make that happen. So we're going to do this. Because this is a new report and we need to save it, we're going to click the save and run button. So go up to the upper right, click save and run. You're going to give this a name, and we're going to type in days off. And I'm just going to put in my initials with my middle, RWS. And then you get this report unique name, right? That's the other thing we need to copy. So copy that, put that into your text edit or wherever you're saving stuff. You are going to need both of those two phrases. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Ryan, this has taken a long time so far. How can we possibly get through the rest of this? Everything else goes very fast from here. If you've done this work and you understand these two things we've just copied, everything else is going to go very fast. I do recommend putting this in a folder that everybody can access. I think it works from the private reports folder, but just to be safe, I'm going to put these in the Sage People, where is it? One of these is a time off folder. Time off management, sure, let's put them there. Doesn't really matter, just don't put it in private reports, even though I think it might work there. All right, and I'm going to click the save button, and we should be good to go. We're going to run our report. And my line chart should look a little more interesting now. Okay, so we can see some bumps on where people in my team, assuming I'm the CEO, this is where time off is actually happening. And I'm just going to show you again, if you need to get the API name of an existing report, you just open it up like this, edit, and then there's a little down arrow next to save where you can get to the properties, and then your unique name is listed there. So that's how you can get the unique name of an existing report if you want to use that. Okay, so we're good there. Okay, the next two steps go very fast. Step 2, we need to take this Salesforce operational report and convert it into a format that's going to work for WX. This is a very clever part of the product that works very easily as long as we have those two things that you saved. So we are going to put those things to good use right now. We need to go over to the WX reports section of our app launcher, and we are going to drop those two things in. If you've done this, this is going to be easy. So from right here, we're going to go to the app launcher in the upper left. We're going to type in WX, and I do want you to see these are the next two things we're going to use. Step 2 is WX reports. Step 3, we're going to go in through the services and create a process to publish it. So we're going to go to WX reports right now. We're going to create a brand new one to the upper right. So click that new button to the upper right. And we're going to drop those two things in. So let's go ahead and make sure we put the base object in the object name. And then also I'm going to take my reports unique name and put it in as the API name of the report. I had them a little bit backwards here in my notepad, but hopefully that wasn't confusing. And if you do that correctly, when you click the save button, our product then goes and harvests information from both of these places. So if you click that save button and don't get an error and you get to this next page, you should see this WX report field section, which has the ID, which is the team member this is going to be pulling from, and also the day, which is the field that we used to group the report. This is what lets us know what information the manager is going to see. And then down below, look, our 2 filters also. If you remember, we built those. And we see off to the left more information that it pulled. And really, there's a section here that I want us to focus on, and that's this section right here. Now, I've got a slide for this in just a moment. We're going to make a couple more quick changes to our report. I wanted to make sure that you've also taken a look and seen that your fields and filters that should be there are off to the right, because if you don't see those there, that means you probably didn't get your base object API name correct. The next thing is going to be making any changes as necessary. Now, if you didn't group your report, it will still work, but you will be locked into a tabular type. Summary type allows us to do more chart types like lines and bars. The show data for team member tick box will include the person who's viewing it in the data, so it would show their own time off in this case. The chart default is going to be whatever chart they see initially. I'm going to choose line for mine, but they'll be able to modify it if they want to. We'll see how that works in a moment. And then also show data for report levels down is important, because if you set this to 0, it will only show the data for the person who's viewing it. So you can actually make WX reports for team members themselves. If you set it to 1, it'll be for a manager's direct team. And if you set it up to 10, that's effectively the entire org chart, because I've never seen a customer that had more than 10 levels. So we are going to set it exactly as I saw it right there. We're going to leave it set a summary. We're going to leave it unchecked for show data for team member. We're going to leave it set to 10 levels down, but I am going to set a chart default. You can set whatever you want here. And if you don't pick anything, it'll just come in as a table, and they can change after that. But I'm going to go ahead and choose a line chart for mine and click save down at the very bottom. You don't have to do that. Great news, because step 2 is now done. We did all the work in our first step. Step 2 is now done, and this WX report is ready to use. Now, the next step is going to be looking for this API name value. And the good news is we already have it saved, and we're going to use that here in just a second. Okay. Next step, last thing, your report exists, but nobody can see it. We need to publish it into WX, which means we get to choose the audience if we want to. Now, there's all kinds of lessons on Sage University on how to make WX processes visible to individual teams, so I'm not going to go over that stuff right now. We're going to make it available to every manager. That's all we're going to do here. And this is really easy, because if you've made one of these before, it's almost the exact same thing. But we are going to put ours under the analytics service just because that makes sense. You can put it under any service you want. And we're going to open up a service and then go into the new WX process section down below. So we're going to go back to the app launcher in the upper left. We're going to type in WX and go to the WX services item. Almost done. We're very, very close to done. And then change the recently viewed list to all if you don't see analytics there. If you do see it, just choose it. But otherwise, go to the all list view and select the first one, analytics. But again, you can put them under anything if you really want to. We just have a place where we shove all our reports in this org. And then there's this WX processes list, and off to the far right, there's a button that allows you to create a new one. So please go click that new WX process button. And again, if you've made these before, it's very similar to what we've done before. We just need to give it a label. This is what the manager is going to see when they go to select it. We often suggest that you put in a title that's in the form of a business question. So I'm going to say something like, how many people are off? I don't know. How many people are off each day? We've got to make sure it's active. We're going to set in an order here. I'm just going to set mine to 1 so it shows up at the top of our list. And we're going to see hopefully several people who have theirs at the top here. And then this is the important thing for a report. You've got to set the process type to reporting. That's an easy one. But in this additional information section here, we need to do something a little bit specific. We've got to make sure that that additional information section down there is formatted exactly the way that I'm about to show you on this slide. It's got to start with report equals, all lowercase and no spaces, and then followed by our API name that we copied earlier. So go ahead and grab your API name, make your way back to this additional information section and simply type report equals and paste it in. That's it. Very easy, but if you don't do it exactly like that, it will not work. And once you click the save button, if you've configured it the way I have above, it immediately becomes published to WX and our managers can see it, which means we can now click this Workforce Experience tab up at the top. We're almost out of time, so click it quickly, because it's going to take about 30 seconds to cache all of our information in here. That's going to launch WX, and I'll show you. By default, this is going to show up in the manager's team section, which we can only get to with the hamburger menu in the upper left. There was an option on the WX report to show in team member, which means that you can make reports that show to the team members themselves as well. So this is the fireworks at the end of the class. We're going to go to the hamburger menu in the upper left. We're going to go down to our analytics service in the teams section. And the very first thing I've got here is how many people are off. And I'm going to click that. And we should see my line chart that shows everybody underneath this manager in the org chart that has time off. Hey, there it is. Very nice. That's how WX Reports works. It's not any more complicated than that. That's everything. So hopefully you've checked out your report and you saw something that looks just like mine. Appreciate you coming. Thank you very much for that.